Hey everyone. Another little rant here, although I don't know if it's a rant so much as a public service announcement. But before I start off, I just want to show you something that's pretty mind blowing to me. So I've shared here before how there's groups that are like attacking knotweed communities, plant communities in this valley. I mean, this is nothing new. They do this all over the country. And trying to, for ecosystem health, right? Trying to improve the ecosystem. Meanwhile, this is all over the place. Not just here, but even more so where many of you live. Just extra acres of mown lawn, not pollinator habitat, not producing food, not a benefit to anyone except the guys who mow it, probably except to the people who own the company that mows it, that has the mowing contract. And meanwhile, could be producing food, could be producing habitat, could have a guaranteed productive, positive output for the community if you just get creative and add food systems to it and plant these systems. But anyway, I just happened to pull over to share this public service announcement with you. So I just heard from a woman who grows greenhouse veg, starts especially, and has for many years in my town. She's great, and I've bought some starts from her over the years. And she says, "Did you hear about Pizzagate? Did you hear about Peppergate?" I said, "No. What are you talking about?" Said, "Oh, there's this huge, mislabeling of peppers, hot peppers, and maybe sweet peppers too, in the seed ecosystem and seed sales ecosystem." And I was like, "Oh, okay, but we all get our seeds from like local seed producers, right?" She's like, "Yeah, that's the thing." She said, I've always bought my seed from, I'm not going to say their name because I'm not doing this to dox anyone. It's a producer that I've bought from for 20 years. They've always been what I thought was a model, seed producer in Vermont, local producer. She always bought her seed from them. And so she got a recall notice from this company that, she probably has bad seed, the wrong seed that they sent her. She's like, "Oh, okay. So where is," she said that there was all this bad pepper seed produced at a very high level. It even affected people like Burpees. So people that Burpee buys from. Apparently there's like these top level producers out of the United States, probably in China, although that's not confirmed, that affected, all these seed suppliers, even people who you would think are growing their seed themselves, so they wouldn't be affected. So she said she got this recall notice from a company that shall not be named. And she's like, "Well, I can't believe you're affected by this because I thought you grew your seed." She's like, "Well, we contract some out." "Okay, yeah, well, I knew you contracted some out to like New England seed growers, right? Because it's climate adaptable seed is how this stuff's always been sold." Oh, well, she emailed them. They long wordy response she said she got from them was saying nothing, saying that, "Well, we can't confirm that." She said, "Okay, well, I'd like to talk with you about this because I always bought seed from you at a premium because it's climate adapted, regionally grown seed." They said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we could talk with you about it." She gave them a bunch of times. They never called her. She contacted them a few more times. No call back. They didn't want to talk about it. They wouldn't tell her where the seed came from. Eventually, they said, "We can't even confirm the country of origin of the seed that you bought from us." This is a company that's prided itself on regionally adapted, climate adapted seed, organic seed producer for decades. Apparently they sold some point in the last handful of years and maybe that's when things started going downhill. I don't know if that's something they would have always, if this is a problem that wouldn't have happened before, or if it's something that's been hi, hello little girl, if it's something that, a problem that could have been in this producer and producers like them for many years. The point is, we tend to assume when something's a certain price and it's sold a certain way, we really don't ask a lot of questions oftentimes. I mean, I say this even personally. I used to go get tacos at a local place that is priced like it's really high-end meat, and some of the meat is high-end. And when they started, there were photos of the guy who owns it with some pigs, and you're like, oh, this is cool. You figure. And a lot of these producers, they don't lie straight up. They're not saying all of this seed is grown by us and it's grown in a certain way, or all of this food is grown a certain way, but they intentionally mislead you. It's bait and switch, right? It's his oldest trick in the book. There's some product that's really legit and they publicize it really well. They have like their show farm, and they show you growing the heck out of this one type of seed or 5 types. And then they sell 200 types, and maybe 80% of it's not grown in such a nice way, and maybe not even in your climate, much less your country. And a lot of restaurants do this too. So I would buy these tacos from this local business, just assuming, I deliberately knew I should have asked, hey, where's the pork come from? But maybe I didn't want to know really, because it tastes so good. And but I'm paying for good, it's high end, look at the price and look at the photos of him with his pigs. But you kind of know, after a while I knew, and I've known for years, there essentially is no good pork. You can't really buy ethically grown pork unless it's very small scale producers who are growing their own feed. It pretty much it's junky food that's sourced with CAFO, at least CAFO derived food scraps, and 99.9% of pig production. That goes for even organic. And when I finally asked, they're like, oh, yeah, well, our beef comes from, down the road most of the time, but the pork comes from Pennsylvania. Oh, okay. What farm in Pennsylvania? Oh, I don't know. It's just a big producer. Okay, so it's like CAFO pork, like straight out of factory pig farm in Pensy. No better than going into this Shaw's right here and buying pork for 1/6 the cost, right? And it brings up just this huge issue of scale, right? And how scoot over still. How I was talking with a friend of mine who's a professional veggie grower and ag extension agent. He's great. I've shared some info from him in the past year. It's a real inside view into the larger food industry and ag industry, and how really basically when you scale, you fail in terms of principles and ethical production and right action when it comes down to it. And yet scale is this holy grail, right? We're always told, oh, if you can't scale it, doesn't matter, it's illegitimate, right? It's essentially like if you can't scale the solution, then it's not a solution. When the rubber meets the road, the reality of our system is that when you scale it, you actually start doing a whole bunch of bullshit every time. And it's so interesting that scale is the holy grail. Scale is the God in this system, when it probably should be things like replicability, reproducibility. Why is the holy grail not let's have 5 million people grow like this, rather than, oh, how can you 5,000 people take this to the 10,000 acre scale or 5,000 acre scale? And that, misframing of the solution, because it really is a misframing. It's not, scaling up doesn't have to be part of the solution at all. Not for a moment. That's only in the industrial model, where scaling up has to be part of the solution. Reproducibility, replicability could easily be a better part of the solution. It's actually the only thing that's proven itself to be part of a viable system in the past, historically. But yet that's not where we go with it. Oh, okay, that's cool what you're doing in your yard. Let's have 100 million people do that. How can we have 10 million people do that? Instead, we tend to say, oh, okay, that's nice, little hobby thing. How do you take that to the 500-acre scale? No. That's an overlay of an industrial model, which has proved its capacity to be catastrophic and in the short run cheap, but it hasn't proved anything else in terms of positive, results, in terms of sustainability, in terms of viability economically, even over the medium or long run, much less long run, and certainly over its regenerative capacity. So anyway, it's just really, we've run into this over and over again. I mean, there is not a single product that I've been a purchaser of in the last 20 years where this hasn't applied. I mean, we used to get this great butter, and then she scaled up, the butter producer. Turns out the price is the same, or it's even gone up when it was like a really high-end, like her 5 cows butter. And then she started buying from the industrial dairy system, same place Ben & Jerry's buys from, which is crap, by the way. And the price is still just as high, but the product is totally different. And the label, there's no lying. Like, she doesn't say this comes from my herd of cows. But, you start it with a certain model, and then it's just the bait and switch, right? I mean, it's basically it's a business model, like straight up. I mean, I think people intentionally do this, but they often, for the most part, don't lie about their product. They just let you believe falsities about their product. And, I've been a victim of this myself many times, even though I should know better. I mean, I know quite a bit about how food is produced, so I should know. But, we don't ask, unless we're asking the question. So unless you go to your seed producer and say, okay, tell me the name of the farm where all of these seeds I'm about to buy are grown. I want to know the names of the farm where each seed's grown. Thanks. And then I'll finish my purchase. Like, no one does that. But you buy from what looks like a great producer, and you just assume, hey, all those photos of their seed being grown, that's not just on their little show farm. It's how they actually grow. Because we want to believe, right? We want to believe in these things are really real. And because it would be a fantastic solution, we can point to it and say, look, that's so awesome. Another example, someone visited my farm the other day who worked on one of these seemingly amazing places. The guy was on Joe Rogan, big producer, sounds incredible. I've been super inspired by this guy and his story. And yeah, you can just go around. Thank you. I'm parked out of the way. So anyway, outdoor enthusiast bro doesn't want to go around. I'm on like a back road. Come on, guy. Anyway, so I had a espresso this morning, and then just heard about this Pepper Gates from a friend and woman I buy from. So I'm a little fired up about this, but it's just so it's so classic, right? It's so reliable that this is the case. Like, you can assume this is true about so many people you buy from who started small and are now bigger. Like, unless you ask and say, okay, how does this actually come to us? So anyway, this guy, seemingly amazing producer at really scaled up, reviving this community. I'm sure many of you know who this is. I'm not going to name them. I don't need to. I'm not trying to dox people here. I'm trying to call out and call in a system not specific people. Because honestly, these people are just trying to survive in the system. Some of them are trying to get rich too after a while, but a lot of them are just trying to survive. And then some of them are like snazzy, young, more like marketing oriented people. I know some of these who are trying to scale up because it'll make them money, even though they probably know they're going to have to throw a lot of principles out. Because it is how this system works. I mean, it's what's rewarded in our system. So anyway, this guy comes to my farm. He hangs out for a day, helps us make cider. He worked there at this farm, and he's like, it's total bullshit. Or it's not total bullshit. It's mostly bullshit. But there's enough legitimate, well done animal production on this farm that you can see that. You can see a video of it. And then 95% of what's stamped with this farm's label, with their name, comes from other farms. And there's a lot of other animal products produced not on pasture with a lot of really bad hay from the industrial system in that area. And a lot of production that's you wouldn't want to see photos of. And that's basically what he said is most of the meat that comes with that label of that farm. And I was so bummed because, it just makes you realize, okay, that model we thought we had in the regen ag world doesn't actually exist. It's actually mostly bullshit. There's a little bit of it that's awesome, and that's what all the marketing's on, but then most of the product is not that. And it's a real bubble burst. But, in some ways, I'm surprised when I hear that this big producer I thought was so awesome is actually a lot of BS. Because I've experienced that for 20 years. I mean, I visited a guy who I thought was doing amazing stuff out in the Midwest. Toured the farm. Realized, okay, it's actually, some of it's amazing, and then actually a lot of it's BS. Like, isn't really real the way we think of it is, the way it's sold to us, the way it's pitched, the way it's in the literature, in the person's book, or in the marketing. And that is true unfortunately, like almost all the time, unless that producer's at a small scale. And it may not even be true if they're at a small scale, but it probably is. And if they're at a medium to big scale, it's almost certainly not as legit as you think it is in terms of like right ways of producing, ethical ways of producing high quality production. And it's a bummer, but it's, this system takes no prisoners, right? It's like all will fall to the demands and will conform to the kind of dictates and rules of the way this like mega industrial system is set up. And that is the problem. It's not, mostly the people. It's a system that we've somehow ended up with, I don't want to even say created, but we're all participants in. As long as we have to struggle to pay our taxes, pay insurance, we're stuck in that. I mean, I went to the ER a month and a half ago for Giardia after kind of raw dogging it for a few days and realizing I just don't have time to be sick with Giardia right now. And there's like a $6 medication for it. It's $2,000 to get a Giardia test. I was in the hospital for 45 minutes. I have good insurance. I have money and I pay for nice insurance. And, hey, Stella. And they paid for 1,000 of it. I still owe $1,000 for, like a 45-minute hospital visit, which would be like free to $10 in a place like Peru, a place that doesn't have much together, you would think on the surface. And that's just how broken our system is, how centralized and how much the wealth is funneled. So anyway, I got to get on a client meeting here, but I hope you're all well. Do the diligence. I mean, ask your producer the real questions that you should ask. but you don't really want to, because maybe you don't really want to find out. That's how it's been for me sometimes. But this was a kick in the butt to like chase it down and boycott these people now and just get better and better seed every year.